Alrighty, howdy folks, greetings and salutations. It is Saturday, August 3rd, 2019, and I wanted to create a video here today and talk a little bit about Linux and the fact that I was talking to a friend last night and I was telling him about Linux, and he was really curious, but he didn't have any idea. Like, he's like, how do you do that? Do you just get a laptop, and do you so I wanted to make a video here for folks that might be interested in Linux, not really knowing about it and not really knowing how to maybe try it out, get it going on your machine or what have you. So there are videos online that talk about it, but I just wanted to give a little brief understanding about what Linux is, how to get it on your machine, how to test it out, how to try it out and see if it's something for you. I'm a big fan of Linux. I was a bench tech for several computer rental companies. For years I used Windows and Mac for years and years, and I had tried out Linux probably in around 2000. I got a hold of a Knoppix CD and I tried it out, and it was in my tech kit for years. I found that the most useful CD that I had, and from there I used Red Hat Linux before it was even Fedora. I've used Fedora. I've used Ubuntu for years and years and years. I was on Ubuntu, and more recently I tried Linux Mint. I tried some other distros. I hopped around. I tried Debian, and then I settled on Manjaro Linux for a while and got my feet wet with Arch. And so now I've been on Arch on this laptop. I run KDE Neon on my other laptop, and I run Manjaro on my desktop, in addition to several other I'm able to boot into probably 6 different operating systems right now. But I want to show you a little bit about Linux. This is Arch Linux. I'll show you. Here's my system here. Arch Linux. This is my laptop. Here's the kernel I'm running. Here's my uptime packages, the shell I'm using, the desktop environment, the window manager, the themes, icons, terminal, the terminal colors down here. Here's my CPU on this laptop and my graphics card, and how much memory I have. 16 gigs of memory here. This also will give you a little bit about my system here, in case you're wondering what version I am. This is the latest version of Arch, I believe. Let's see if I do an update. Let's see if there's any updates. There's nothing to do, so there's no updates as of right now. But if there were, that's how easy it is to update. In Linux, you literally type that command right there, and there's no reboots, there's no hassles of blue screens and problems and this and that. This is the easiest OS for updating. You're not, when you go to Mojave to Catalina, you have to download a whole new. It's not like that. You literally just hit that, type in your password, and then it runs through updates in a minute, or a couple seconds if there's not very much. So that's as easy as that. And I'll talk more about package managers. I want to get into that a little bit more later, but I'll just say that is one of the biggest features of Linux. Running Linux is the use of package managers, and it's so much better than Windows, so much better than Mac. It is kind of like Mac in a way. Mac has the Mac Store, and package managers do work like that. So if I bring up, let's see, package manager here, this is Pacman, Paymac. Pacman in Arch is actually the terminal package manager. Everything can be done from the terminal, and Pacman is the application for that. But this is a graphical environment for the repositories and for what's called a package manager. And basically, it's a way to get software and packages onto your machine. Repositories are a collection of packages that are hosted, through someone's computers. In this case, Arch maintains their own repositories, but they also have the community repository here, which is the AUR, the Arch user repository. But if you were to go over here and say, for example, you wanted to grab, I don't know, an audio program, it works just like the Apple Store or Android Store. If you come over here and you just look around for it, like say you wanted Kden Live, I already have it on my machine right here, but and if you go to install, this will tell you which is the installed applications on your machine at the moment. I have quite a few because I installed the whole KDE package when I installed Plasma, but typically you could install, that's the great thing about Linux, you could install what you want, remove what you want. I haven't removed all the packages I want to yet, but if you want to run a really lean machine, you could really just install what you need when you need it, and you could add and remove that from PayMac. There's also Octopi, which is for KDE. This is the one Manjaro uses right here. It's just a different interface, a different package manager, or different interface for Pacman, the package manager. And like I said, I won't go too much into package management, but I can tell you it is the most wonderful thing coming from Windows, and you're not going to, shady websites, or who knows where you're going to get these executable programs that aren't really moderated. You don't really know what you're getting. You don't know what kind of software you're installing on your machine, and you wonder why there's so many viruses and backdoors and malware, spyware, all different other kinds of viruses and things that Windows hosts, because it's not really maintained and moderated. So that's the beauty of Linux, is that all this stuff is looked at by the development team. Everything, if there was anything that was a little shady or whatever, it would be instantly removed. The community's looking at it, the developers, and everybody's able to look at the source code, which is the beauty of open source. And I won't go off too much on a rant about the importance of privacy, but when you kind of sign away your life on Windows and Mac, and the fact that they control it. It's a closed system. It's a walled garden. You're able to use their stuff, but it's their software. It's not open. So you can't look, and you can't kind of change the source code. You can't look at it. You can't identify if there's problems with it. That's the beauty of Linux, is that it's completely open source and completely free, and anyone can go in and look at what's going on and change it, and the flexibility and the customization is really very attractive in terms of an operating system. You're not locked out. Yes, sure, Windows allows you and Mac allows you to change your desktop or your wallpaper, but you can't really change you could change fonts, but you can't change icons. You can't change panels. You can't change menus. Like if I wanted to, this panel right here, I could put up top. I could put it on the side. I could put it there. I could delete it. All these widgets. These are all widgets that are on the panel that I use. Like here's a dashboard widget, just for a quick way to get to your favorites and to your recent apps and your different programs and stuff like that. This is your application menu, and this is like a launcher, just like a start launcher for Windows, or something like along those lines. There's also just like Windows, you could pin these to your panel here, and then if you wanted to get to your calculator, I keep my calc in here so that I can go Meta 1, and it just brings up my calculator. If I want to go Meta 2, it brings up Dolphin Browser, and so forth, Meta 3, Meta 4, or Super Key, whatever you call your Windows button on your keyboard. So you are able to completely customize Linux in ways, unfathomable ways, that just Windows you just can't, Mac you can't. They lock you out. You're not able to change the look and feel. Here I can change complete look and feels. I can change the themes of and I just have a few in here, but you can, if you wanted to change the colors, for example, like say, and you could sort with Plasma, the more recent Plasma version, you could sort by light and dark themes, which is I think is great. But you can get new color themes. You can go over here. This will bring up your provider information here, and you could just install, like if you wanted Sweet KDE or RKDE, this is a popular one. You just hit install, and it installs it. I mean, it's that simple to change. You're not going online trying to find all kinds of programs and stuff. And you know, a lot of times when you use third-party programs in Windows, it just breaks your machine because it's not able to really use the code properly. So this is when you a lot of times you get into a lot of trouble. But here, so RKDE. So now, where is it? Did I install it? Is it a light theme maybe? I don't know. Arc, here it is right here. So that it's as easy as that to install some of these things and to change some of the things. And the beauty of Linux is that when you get your machine the way you like it, it's a completely unique experience. No one has the same machine as you because you've custom tailored it to exactly the way you wanted it to be, which I think is really cool. You know, it's a unique operating system. It's, you know, up to you, and it's a limitless. It's, you know, the sky is the limit kind of on what you want to be able to do with it. You can make it as simplistic or as, you know, there's a lot of, if you just search Unix porn on Reddit, or if you go online and just type in, you know, here, we'll just bring it up. There's just so many different people out there that are customizing these various distributions and various desktop environments for Linux, and they're just, some of them are just outrageously cool. So let's see if I mean, some of them, I mean, are just outrageous. You know, I mean, you can go through these yourself and see what people are doing, but it's pretty neat. It gives you some ideas on what you could do with Linux and how far you could take the customization. I tend to take it pretty far because I like to experiment. I like to try different things. But the purpose of this video is to kind of talk not more about customization, but specifically how to get Linux and how to install it and what it is. So Linux is an operating system, just like Windows, just like Mac OS. And what it is, it's completely open source. So all the code has been written by the community. So it's originally, it was the kernel was built by Linus Torvalds. I'm not going to give you a history lesson on Linux. You could certainly look that up. Linus was a student, I believe, at MIT, and he was kind of the original person who offered, you know, his work up and offered it to the community as a free operating system, and people have taken it and kind of expanded upon it. And in fact, if I go over here to, I could show you some of the Linux forks on, let's see if I could find a distributions timeline. If I show you, this is, I don't want to scare you from all the different distros from this, and this is, it could be a good thing or a bad thing. A lot of people say Linux never really took footing because it was never, it was so disjointed. People never came together and offered one offering. There were so many different offerings just off of Debian alone. I mean, here's how many times it was forked with all these different distros. And this is the timeline. So if you see when it started back in, I don't even know what year it would be, 1993, and then it started forking all these different times all the way up to 2019. So one of the more popular ones, Debian is like the granddaddy, but one of the more popular ones, if you look, probably this orange line here, is Ubuntu. Yes, it certainly is. And you can see even that was forked several more times with Elementary and Ubuntu Mate, KDE Neon. This is what I use on my other machine. This is, KDE is a desktop environment, that Plasma desktop environment. KDE isn't awesome. That's what I'm using here. Totally king of the desktop environments as far as I'm concerned, in terms of customability, just awesome. And KDE Neon, although they say it's not a distribution, it's pretty awesome because you're getting all the latest and greatest from KDE as it comes out. I won't go into rolling desktops or rolling distros versus some of the other stuff, but I just wanted to show you real quick some of the different types of distros. And again, these are the Debian family. Then you have down here, you have the Red Hat family, and then you have the Arch family, which is what I'm running on this machine. And you can see Manjaro right here. So this is how Antergos is just stopped. This is no longer, but they replaced it with Evolution. Is it Evolution or is it Endeavor? Endeavor OS is the new Antergos. It's basically an easy installer for Arch. Arch gets a bad rap as being kind of elitist in the fact that it is more difficult to install. So people give it a bad rap as, you know, like snobbish or elitist to people that use Arch. But realistically, it's just, and in today's day and age, it's not really as difficult as it once was. Yeah, it's command line based. You have to install it from the command line, and there's no GUI, and it's not as quick to install. It's not as easy to install. It's totally doable with a little bit of time and a little bit of effort. But that's the beauty of Linux, is that it is simple. A lot of people think it's difficult. You have to know command line, and you have to know a lot about computers, but you really don't. You know, if you think about when you went back to Windows, when you started out, you had to learn a certain amount, or Mac. So there is a slight learning curve, but once you get it in 2 or 3 days, I think your workflow will be just as productive and even more productive and more economical than it was on Windows or Mac. So don't be afraid to try it out. I don't suggest you put it on your primary daily driving machine, the one that you use the most, or your production machine that you have to have up until you get your feet wet, until you understand what you're doing. But go on OfferUp, go on Craigslist, eBay, Marketplace on Facebook, and find, you know, people are basically giving laptops away nowadays. Once they get bloated or they no longer work, the software is broken, the hardware is still good. So you could either take that laptop, throw in a new hard drive, a new SSD, or you could simply just write over it and put Linux on it. So I'm going to show you now how to do that. So basically what you need to do is a couple things. You first need to download a piece of software called, if you're coming from Windows, called Etcher, or it's or Balena Etcher, or you could do Rufus. Etcher is really easy. You download this little tiny piece of software here, and basically what it's going to do, I'm on Linux, but if you were coming up on Windows, you would do the window installer. You download this little piece of software, and you get yourself a little 4 gigabyte flash drive or 8 gigabyte flash drive, and then you go to the desktop of your choosing. So if you do, like, say, Pop OS, I always recommend Pop OS or Linux Mint or Ubuntu for people starting out. If you're just starting out, you know, if you're on Windows, you know, Linux Mint might be very familiar to you. It's very similar. So you can go to linuxmint.com. Or if you're coming from Mac, you can go to Elementary and you can use the Pantheon desktop environment. There's several different distros that I recommend, but typically I'm talking about Linux Mint for people like with Cinnamon that use Windows, or Elementary OS with Pantheon for Mac, or Pop OS. Pop OS is probably the one I've been recommending the most, but Linux Mint can certainly get you going as well. So these two software, and what you'll want to do is, after you get your little installer here for your flash drive, you download the ISO for whatever distribution that you want. Distro is just short for the word distribution. It's just a different flavor, a different variety of Linux that you can choose from. and there's different desktop environments also that you get. As you start out, as you get more mature and you learn more in Linux, you could certainly find what works better for you, what workflow is more ideal for you, and what you like better. But realistically, it doesn't matter what you choose because you can change everything anyway. So it's really just what's very well supported, what repositories are updated regularly, what has the most support online. Definitely Ubuntu by far has the most, and these are all forks off of Ubuntu. So there's certain amount of things that are just distribution agnostic, they call. So it basically work on any distribution that you have, that you use, whether it's Pop! OS or Linux Mint or whatever. The commands are the same. It's Linux. So don't get bogged down on, I don't know what distro to choose. I don't know what desktop to choose. Just choose one and go with it. You could always change it later if you don't like it, and most likely you will as you go along. You could also have several different desktop environments on one distro. And if you have, if you're using like SDDM or Screen Login Manager, that's where you would choose your different desktop environments. But don't get too bogged down on that kind of stuff. Just either download the regular Pop! OS version or the LTS. LTS is long-term support. Typically, LTS support would last for up to 5 years. Which is a good amount of time. So these versions aren't a rolling distro like Arch. Arch is a rolling distro, and a rolling distro just means that you never have to reinstall it. It's constantly rolling to update. It updates, and once you install it once, it's installed. So little things that you will learn along the way. But today we're just getting you to install Linux and just getting you an understanding on how to install it and what goes into installing it. So, and there's plenty of videos online. I just wanted to talk a little bit about it and give you a little background on an easy way to get you up and running with it. Now, once you download the ISO means image file. This is an image of the distribution, okay? So, but you can't just copy this onto a desktop or copy this into a file. You have to copy this onto a flash drive. We used to use CDs. Actually, I used to use floppy disks, but then it went to CDs, then it went to DVDs. Now it's done with either a network install, or the easiest way is just a USB install. And when you get it onto your flash drive, this is going to, once you get this installed, you launch this and it'll tell you, okay, where is the ISO? Once you have that downloaded, you point that to the flash drive and it will make the flash drive bootable. Now, what I mean by bootable is when you go into your BIOS, okay, every machine it's a basic input-output system that you press, usually it's a function key or it could be the delete key. When you boot up, so when you're coming from scratch, your computer's off, you press the on button, the power button, and you press one of these function keys. You have to determine which one it is for your particular manufacturer. So for mine, for this Acer, it's F2. It's the F2 button. So when I'm booting up, I hit F2 and it puts me into the BIOS. On my Lenovo X1 Carbon, it's the F1 button. On my desktop, it's the delete button. But what that's going to do is that's going to get you into the BIOS or the EFI, depending on your machine. And I'm not going to go too much into that as well because that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But just know what you're doing here. Generally, you're wanting to boot off of your USB stick, okay? So what you're doing is you're installing the ISO on a bootable USB stick. You're plugging that into your USB port, and you're going into your BIOS, and you're telling your computer, hey, computer, don't boot off the hard drive first, boot off the USB drive first, so that it sees the USB drive first instead of the hard drive. Sometimes you have to disable secure boot in your BIOS so that Windows has put some funky things in there so that you don't, you're not able to overwrite the hard drive and stuff like that. So you could disable secure boot. You can go in there, you could boot off your USB stick. And when you do that, you'll be presented with the installer for Linux. And Linux usually has one of two options at that point. You could either install it or you can try it. And so basically it's running off the USB stick in your memory, in your random access memory. So you could basically use it just like a regular computer. You could surf the internet. It has a browser, it has a terminal, it has certain limited functions, applications and stuff that you could use. But it's basically a Linux version that's running off of the USB stick. So you could try it without installing it onto the hard drive. Or there's usually two buttons, try or install. So if you want to install it, this is at that point where you would hit install. You would go through the process of writing it to your hard drive. At that point, you're going to lose everything on your hard drive. You're going to wipe the hard drive. You're going to tell it, hey, I'm not talking about dual booting. I'm not talking about, I never recommend dual booting. This is why I recommended getting a completely another laptop, a test laptop, something that's an extra laptop and not your primary machine. I don't recommend dual booting. I don't recommend using one machine or even two hard drives in one machine or any of that at first. Now, like I said, I pentaboot, or I could boot 5 different operating systems on one machine, or 6. So that's down the road. When you get more experienced and you want to have different flavors and different things going on, you could do that. But for now, you want to just overwrite your entire hard drive. And if you have to go buy a new hard drive, and you can get a 128 gig hard drive for like $20 now, an SSD drive. And you could throw that in a laptop that you could find, a really good, decent laptop, maybe 3 or 4 years old, for $100 or $200. Pinebook Pro is offering pre-orders right now for their laptop. It's a $199 brand new Pinebook Pro. It has Linux, a Debian, flavor of Debian on it. So you can get one of those if you want and have a full version of Linux, and you could throw Pop! OS on that or whatever you want. But yeah, just get a hold of a laptop. I recommend Lenovo. Dell is really Linux friendly as well, but I recommend Lenovo just because it's years ago there was a lot of hardware problems with Linux. They weren't supporting some of the hardware, but now the kernel, they fixed all that. I mean, Linux, you should have no problem. I'm not saying it'll work on every piece of hardware, but several pieces. Manufacturers, different types of wireless cards and Ethernet cards and graphics cards and stuff like that. Linux by far is the most robust in terms of able to support virtually every type of hardware out there, which is awesome. So you could get yourself a little laptop, get yourself a distro, throw it on a thumb drive, get into your BIOS, let your computer boot into the bootable USB drive, install Linux on your machine, and then have at it. Once it's installed, you pop out the USB drive, you hit restart, and you'll boot up into Linux. And then you could start customizing. You could start, you tweak it out. Change your wallpaper. I use this program here. It's pretty neat. You could download it. It's called Variety, and it's a wallpaper changer. Like I could just go here and get to my next wallpaper. If you want to see the preferences here, it's pretty neat. There's all kinds of effects. There's all kinds of downloading from various different sites. And you could tell it, the size and the color and the rating, and you can, even if you wanted to limit it so that there's not as sketchy, it's not downloading sketchy wallpapers or any of that. I mean, this is a pretty cool program. I really dig it. If you want, I just dump into a folder, into my pictures folder, I just dump in like a bunch of wallpapers, and then I have it scrolling every minute. But you could have it scroll every 5 minutes or every day or whatever you want. And then if you want to change it to the next one, you just hit next, or if you want to change it to the previous one, you hit previous. It's pretty neat. Again, this is KDE Plasma 5. I really love KDE. That is my... Now, let's talk about... So there's different distros, as I said. Debian is the granddaddy, and then all the family of Debian distros, and then there's Arch, and then there's Red Hat. Those are the main ones. There's also what's called desktop environment, and that's what is called your Windows Manager. There's GNOME, or GNOME, as some people say. There's KDE Plasma. There's XFCE. There's Cinnamon. There's Pantheon. There's Mate. There's a number of different ones. And on a side note, I should say that the two biggest, GNOME, and KDE, just announced as of yesterday, they're going to be joining forces to create an ultra-modern desktop environment. And I'm super stoked about this because I love GNOME and KDE both, and to get the best of both of those and have those developers working together, to me, might change the Linux landscape in ways that and right now, Linus Torvalds talked about how Linux was so disjointed, and that's why it never really took a footing in the operating system worlds, because so many people were working on their own projects and no one was really coming together and working together to create one unified Linux operating system. So this could be the start of that. I don't know if it's really going to happen, and there's people that are very passionate about GNOME that don't want it to change and be like KDE, and the same thing from the KDE camp, that they want no part of anybody changing KDE, because but I'm really optimistic, and I want to see really what happens with that project, because I think it's going to be one of the most important projects to date. Even bigger than what Valve has been doing with Proton lately. I don't know if you guys are aware, Proton now is an emulator that Valve's been in development for the last 11 months to make all Windows games compatible with Linux. And we're already seeing faster frame rate, or more frame rates per second than Linux machine, or than Windows machines on Linux. And this has all happened in the last 11 months. There's already over 6,000 games available for Linux that were once only offered on Windows, thanks to Valve and thanks to Proton. So they're extremely, they're really pushing for Linux to be the gaming platform. And the work that they're doing is just, it's amazing. And I just feel like within the next few years, there's going to be a lot of changes. So learn Linux now. Get it down. It's not hard. It's not difficult. It is a little bit of a learning curve, but it's front loaded. Once you learn it, you have it for life. And you might have to. I could recommend some tutorials from complete noob, complete beginner to complete power user. Just by watching a few of these videos, it's not very hard. In fact, I could put some of those links in the show notes or in the notes below, so that you can get to some of these videos they're offered. Some of them were offered on Udemy or Udemy, but they're offered for free now on YouTube. There's different ways to learn it. Some people are visual. I like learning by videos, so I go to YouTube a lot. That's where I learn most of my stuff if I have a problem. But most likely, if you come across a situation, you get stuck, or most all the times that I've broken Linux were because of my own fault, either taking things too far or not know what I was doing or whatever. So it could happen. I'm not saying that you won't break your machine, because it is so robust, and there is so many things that can depend on other things. So you do have to kind of Try to keep it simple at first and know what you're doing. Don't remove stuff if you don't know what you're doing. Also, I recommend installing Timeshift. Timeshift is a program. I'm not sure if I have it on this machine yet. I do not. So Timeshift is a program that if you get, it's basically a way to roll back your machine to the last boot. So if you, for some reason, it doesn't boot up, you could roll back to Timeshift and get your machine back instead of having to restall. But Linux installs so quickly anyway. Nowadays, in like 15 minutes, you could, unless you're installing Arch, which can take an afternoon. But if you are installing Pop! OS or something, you could get your machine up and running and get it back just by a fresh install in 30 minutes or so. So try it out, give it a shot, and let me know if you have any problems, if you have any questions. Let me know. I'm happy to help you. Like I said, I'm a Linux user for about 20 years now. I've seen a lot. I've been through a lot. I kind of know a lot. I don't know everything. I'm not, saying I'm an expert by any means. But if I don't know something, I kind of know how to go about getting it. And that's the beauty of the Linux community, is that you can go to the forums and people are very willing to help you solve some of the issues that you may come across. Not like Microsoft, you got to call them on the phone. You don't really have a lifeline. With Linux, there's a huge community out there. There's a ton of people that are willing to help. There's a ton of people that are, have gone before you and can, lead you or direct you into, how to check the log files, how to get your system optimized, how to, do things. So use that leverage, use the community, and who knows, maybe you'll even find interest in becoming a developer, and you can even contribute to projects and have your name on stuff that, it's always amazing to me. Some of the times the people that are answering me in the forums and stuff are people that actually are the ones who developed this stuff. So that to me it's pretty special. It's a very friendly community typically. I mean, you always have your bad apples, but typically people are very helpful. And like I said, the beauty of Linux is severalfold. Privacy is number one. Security, speed, reliability, customability or customization, flexibility. Package managers. There's so many things. People say, well, why do you need Linux? I never found a use for it, really. You don't realize that you need it until you use it, until you have it. And then you realize, I never want to go back to Windows again. I never want to. There is no reason why I would ever want to use Mac, And like the Pinebook Pro, they're not even selling their laptops for profit. They're selling to get people to get Linux in their hands, And I think, it's just like Russia, China, South Korea are all moving to Linux. The governments are all moving away from Windows. It's just a matter of time before Linux wins the operating system war. So get in now. Now is the time. This is the year of the Linux desktop. They're starting to now do work. You've heard of VR, and virtual reality has been a big thing on gaming platforms, but now they're starting to do work in the desktop workflows. So, and I'm going to be following those projects really closely, because to think about something that can improve my workflow. Imagine working on photos, and instead of it getting all pixelated when you get a big screen or you get close to a screen, you have it in your complete line of sight, and you can use gestures, and you could just your workflow, desktop workflow in editing, in video editing, in I mean, just the possibilities are endless. You know, you want to teach kids about what it's like to, you know, you could walk among the dinosaurs. You could, you know, isn't that the whole thing about traveling and seeing places and doing things? And soon you're not even going to need to leave your house. You put on a VR headset and you could be on the moon, or you could be in another galaxy, or you can be in the space shuttle, or you could, I mean, the possibilities are endless of what you can learn. Think about for medical, how you could, you know, dissect and just, it's endless, the amount of workflow that's going to happen in the next couple of years. And this is all going to happen, you know, with Linux and with VR and with the future of computing is really exciting. So what I'm saying is get in, learn Linux now, learn it, and trust me, you'll never want to go back. There is so much potential, and it's just so much faster. 100% of the world's fastest computers run Linux. 100%, period. You know, a majority of all the servers in the world run Linux. You know, that's because of reliability. There's servers that have been up and running for 10 years without a reboot, and they probably never will be rebooted. They need to be up and running, or else they're losing money. So these servers, you know, unless hardware failure, unless they purposely reboot, they'll probably never be rebooted. You know, screw Windows and their updates. The most inconvenient time and the most inconvenient way with, you know, waiting and rebooting and waiting, you know, Windows is updating. Great. I mean, it's ridiculous, you know, when I can come over here and bring up that command and hit enter and type in my password, and it synchronizes my packages. Okay, so now there is an update. Okay, it's 0.4 megabytes. Okay, so here, let's do it. Let's do an update right now. Look how fast that was. That's it. Done. There's my update. See how fast that was? You didn't even see it. It was so fast. So package managers are wonderful. You know, they are the best thing. I mean, I can't, that alone, and wobbly windows. I love wobbly windows. If, you know, these are little wobbles, wobble. That alone is enough for me to want to use Linux. But there's all different kinds. So like, for example, like the Magic Genie, like if I minimize that, see, it's like a genie lamp. Boop, boop. That's just a cool thing. Or if I close down this window, how it folds. If I open that window, it folds down. Nice. Folds up, folds down. So you could change all those. You can come in here to your desktop behavior, and let's oh, I just applied arc. I didn't want to do that. Let's go back and change that back. What was that? My workplace? Oh no, plasma theme. That was my colors, I think. What did I have? Fantasy blue? No. Did I have arc dark? What was my? I think it was breeze dark. Anyway, you could change these. You could play around with them if you want. But desktop behavior, so if you come over here to desktop effects, there's a ton of them. You could do translucency, for example. If I wanted to change, oh, I actually did change these. I bumped these down a little bit, but I could set these back to the defaults if I wanted to, just by hitting that, and it'll change them back to the default translucency. Magic lamp, squash, fall apart. So if I wanted to, like for example, hit this one, so now if I close this, it'll just fall apart, or not. Oh, because I have that other one enabled, which is, let's just change that again, desktop effects. I have it down here on glide. So glide, I changed it to 500 milliseconds and rotation top. But if I wanted to change it from left to right, I can go left and right. And now, instead, it'll glide open left and right. So let's apply that. And see now, instead of going top to bottom, it goes left to right. So if I open it, it'll open like a book. Or, you know, and you could do different things. It's pretty neat, the different animations and effects you could do. With, you know, what you can configure. It's just, it really is just amazing. The desktop cube, I believe, is F11. Let's see. Do I have that enabled? I don't know if it's going to work on, yeah, so that's kind of a neat thing. People seem to like that. It's not very useful, but you know, it's kind of neat to have. There's present windows, which I mapped to meta tab, kind of that Mac thing where you can pick whatever window you want. So that's a cool one, or you could do the Windows one. I have there. Dolphin by far is the best file manager ever. And it is so robust and so powerful. You could do so much with this file manager. I will save that for a whole nother video because it is so awesome. I don't even want to get into it too much here, but just know if you're not using Dolphin File Manager and you have Linux, you're missing out. It can do so much. It's great. What else can we talk about real quick? I mean, there's a ton of different applications. Like I said, pretty much anything you wanted to do. Now, you're not going to get yet your Adobe products, your Final Cut, you know, your production kind of applications. Not to say that it's always going to be that way, but for right now, you'd have to use, if you're using Photoshop, you could use GIMP. If you're using Illustrator, you could use Inkscape. There's alternatives, or, I mean, really, if you have an application that you just can't live without and you have to have it, then you could install a virtual machine on Linux and install another operating system, Mac, Windows, whatever you want, and then just run that in a virtual machine. You will sacrifice some system resources, but it's totally doable. On my desktop downstairs, I use virtual machine because I have to get to eTrade Pro for my stock trading software. It's only offered on Windows and Mac, so I had to install Windows in a virtual machine and use it that way. But this way you don't have to reboot, or you could dual boot, but virtual machines are really cool. You can install, you know, some people have 10, 20 virtual machines, and they could just bounce back and forth if they're a developer. Just go to different distributions and test things out. Linux is just amazing. It's awesome. And I can't recommend it enough. The reason I'm making these videos is because I feel like people should know about it. And I think by default they were just thrown into Windows, and then they, after got tired of Windows, so then they went to Mac. And Mac became like this social status kind of thing, like, oh, I got a Mac, but really you're paying $2,000 for a laptop, a Facebook machine, you know, you're using it for school, so you type your notes and you use it for Facebook. That's ridiculous. I mean, you can get a $200 laptop and it'd be way more powerful and way more, you'd have, I don't know. I'm not a fan after trying Linux, and whatever you choose, it's personal preference. You know, you could be a Mac guy and I'll never change your mind. You could be a Windows person and, you know, be stuck with your stupid updates and your viruses and everything like that. There's, you know, not saying there's not ever or there never will be viruses on Linux, but I don't have any antivirus software. I don't ever hear about viruses on Linux. I don't, you know, antivirus software running in the background just takes resources. Why would I want to have a system, first of all, that compromises my privacy? Second of all, that compromises my system with security because of the viruses and every malware imaginable. And why do you think all these laptops are in the garbage on the side of the road? Why do you think I found 2 in the garbage the other day? Why do you think I have so many hard drives? Because I picked them up off the side of the road and ripped the hard drives out because people throw them away because Windows gets so bloated, it's unusable. And these are new machines. These aren't even that old, you know? That's sad. That's sad. It's sad that Mac won't let me update my wife's MacBook because it's over 5 years old. I can't update to Catalina. I can't even update to Mojave. Apple won't let me. But I could put Linux on it, and I could run a version of Catalina through Linux, and it'll run just fine. So I know the hardware is not the issue. It's Apple wanting to sell more product. That's the same reason they went to dongles. It's the same reason they just want to sell you as much as they can. That's why they're $1 trillion company. But I'm tired of it. It's not fair. So get on Linux. It's free. It's awesome. And I'll continue making videos if you're interested. And I'll help anybody, like I said, that is interested in making the switch. You won't regret it. Trust me. You will by far be much better off running Linux, using Linux, and just enjoy it. Have fun with it. That's the thing too, is it's fun. You know, it's fun to be able to do what you want to do. Take control of your machine instead of being locked out and locked down and waiting for the next version of Windows. And I mean, how long did it take for them to get dark mode? I mean, they've been stealing ideas from Linux for years. They've been stealing all kinds of things. Mac too. Some of the design things. Mac doesn't care about design. Why do you think their #1 designer left the company? Because Tim Cook could care less about design. Tim Cook cares about selling product. That's it. He doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about your money as long as he's getting it from you. He cares about selling more product. You know, and that's the beauty of Linux, is it's free. The software is free. The community is friendly. The community is there to help you. So that's it for now, folks. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Like I said, if you have any questions, let me know. If I could be of help, I will. And keep learning, keep using Linux, and I'll see you soon. Thanks. Have a good day.